live stream we do every Wednesday here, the Wednesday Night Hump on the Upstairs to the Right Music channel. So glad to be here with everybody. How is everybody doing out there? I always start out by saying thank you so much for taking the time to tune in. Um, Time is a valuable thing, and for you to spend a little bit of yours with me is always greatly appreciated. So I want to say thank you so much for that. Starting off always on a good foot. Um, how's everybody out there? Scott, Maddie, my two mods in the house tonight. I feel really blessed. Good to have you guys here. Mr. Watson, hello. Heidi Ho, how you doing? While we wait for more people to show up here in the chat, I will dream to dream. I was looking at my old website, well, not so old, but it's been a few months now. The websites in Japan that I used to peruse when I was doing my buys, the back alley type papers. And it had been a minute since I had looked at them, as I just said, and I was surprised by the pricing on the 70s Grecos. The 70s Grecos, interestingly enough, are actually falling in price. The 70s Tokais are actually going up a little bit in price. Now, the Grecos were made at the Matsumoku factory, mostly during the mid 70s period. And the Tokais were built, as you know, at the Fujigen factory, which later on the Tokais kind of morphed into Fender Japan. So I guess what you're getting is a pretty nice 70s, Fender, pretty close to Fender type guitar with the Tokais. The Grecos, I think they're great too, but let's be honest, some of them can be boats. They can be boats. And also, they don't have the same je ne sais quoi as the Tokais did. However, that being said, one thing that the Grecos do have that's really great is they have a the laminated maple necks on them, which was a feature that you found on the if you're a tone junkie, they'll tell you, well, that's the type of neck that Jimi Hendrix had on his Strats, which is true. And anyway, it's something that you have to get custom shop now. So you can get that on those Grecos, but the price of the Grecos are pretty cheap. You can get a 70s, you can get a 75, 76 Greco Matsumoku made. If you hunt around enough, you can get them for around 300, under 300 euros. Dare I say, in some cases, under 250 euros, which is, that's incredible uh, considering where they were at a year ago. So I say dare I dream because, as you know, I'm planning on going to Japan in May, and it would be a shame if I didn't come back with something in my bag. So I might go guitar hunting in Japan. I'll take you to some of the back alley places that I go to, and some of the places that a lot of the guitar guys who come over from other countries they don't know about. You got, and it's not necessarily in the boonies. You just have to know where to look, and we'll do that. I'm thinking there may be something out there. We'll see. It's a thought. At the very least, as you know, I love those Greco necks, especially on the ones like the Super Sound. I'm sorry, is that the Tokai? Anyway, something like that. In any case, yeah, Super Sounds with the Grecos that have the not the 70s headstock, but the older headstock on those actually have wonderful necks on those. So at the very least, I'm looking for a Greco or a Tokai maple neck because as much as I like the neck on my guitar, I have no qualms with swapping that neck out. Although it's a good neck, I've worked on it. It's pretty nice. Between myself and Fur, we've got it really nice. But I still would prefer a guitar with that kind of neck. So even if I just get a neck from the '70s Greco Tokai, that would be okay. I'd be happy with that. Red, how you doing, sir? Welcome, Red. Welcome, 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 welcome. Mr. Ben, how you doing? Welcome to you. My buddy Adam finds made in Japan guitars on Reverb and eBay all the time for under 200 that just need some love. Yeah, you know, I'm not opposed to that. I saw a junker, not really a junker. I looked at it. It has good bones for under 200 euros, and it was a '78 Greco super sound and super sounds, and all original. Everything was there. It was just beat up all hell. But I like those because, as you know, I've already refurbished a few of those. So to me, that's not a big thing. So we'll see. We'll see. Dream to dream, like I said. BBT, boy, BBT legit. Sorry, my tongue is waking up. I just listened to a guy who said he went to a Nashville guitar show. He said there was a ton of vintage guitars for sale. Yes, indeed. A very good way of me segueing into tonight's topic. Thank you very much, sir. Cheers to everybody out there. So glad everybody's here as always. Wonderful to have you here for these talks. After last week's live stream about the great guitar sell off, a comment came up where somebody compared the guitar market to another thing that actually is very near and dear to my heart. And at first, I thought it was a strange comparison, but the more I thought about it and said, well, in this way, or well, yeah, that kind of makes sense, and mapped it out, I was amazed. And I think it's a good indicator of where we're going future wise with the vintage guitar market. Heck, maybe even the entire guitar market in totality. The guitar market has a demographic problem, is tonight's live stream, tonight's podcast. And the industry that is comparative to the guitar market is the ski market, skiing. When I was a little kid, I grew up skiing. I lived in Southern California. I belonged to my father and the family. We belonged to a ski club called Four Seasons West. We would ski up in Mammoth. We would ski. If we rent a bus and go up to Tahoe. A lot of the ski resorts up and down Southern California we would go to. I mean, even up to the north. And I love skiing. But that was a club. That was a group, an organization. There was enough of us. I mean, we had at one point we had to rent two, American 70 size buses. Those aren't small, and to get to places. And it's interesting now because the more I thought about it, the more the comparison to the guitar market and the ski market actually makes sense. Did you get that mic with me in mind? Red, I have had this microphone. I can, in all honesty, say this is one of the first pieces of recording equipment that I bought in my early days in the '90s. I was working for South Central Motown. A guy I bought it at the Guitar Center up on Sunset. And I walked in, and the guy that I knew there, pretty cool guy, don't know what happened to him, said, "We got these mics in. They're Russian made. Uh, they're not expensive, but they're as good as some of the other mics that we have here." And I bought one, and I have used this to record every voiceover, a lot of guitars, a lot of amps, and all my vocals have been done on this microphone. So yeah, it's a good one. I've had it for, I guess that would put it, well, maybe 35 years, maybe more. But I love skiing. I grew up skiing. I got to be pretty good. I would well imagine that if I went out on the ski course these days, it wouldn't take me very long to get back into form again. But skiing has something in common with guitar playing in the sense that you don't randomly become a skier. You don't randomly become a skier. I suppose if you grew up in Utah, like my nephews do, skiing would be, an integral part of your life. Hell, you might even have to, ski to school if it snows too much. But in general, you just don't randomly become a skier. You have to be introduced to it, usually by your family or your friends or your schoolmates or your local culture, in the case of my nephews. But that's if but this is what happens when this kind of introduction stops happening because the whole ecosystem kind of slowly shrinks. And you can see in that regard, that's exactly how it has a lot in common with the guitar market. Mike Watson says, I love to ski. Yeah, I do too, Michael. I mean, I've been doing it since my father could convince my mother to put skis on me. I mean, seriously, I was doing pizza, French fry. Yeah, I was like six. um, let's see. Spammer. I was introduced to it by a friend. He was a racer. Yeah, we had this ski club called Four Seasons West that we belonged to, and all the kids, and kind of grew up with a lot of the kids we knew from the neighborhood as well, and outside. My father, it was mostly made up of my father's airline pilot friends. So, Lowell, if they would troll with a little bit of intelligence, I'd have more fun. I feel bad for dropping the band hammer on a single dumb comment. I was talking, so I didn't see what that comment was. Maybe I don't need to know. I appreciate my moderators as always, Matter Scott. Thank you guys so much for watching out for the spam. Now think about skiing. Back in the 70s and the 80s, it was huge, guys. It was huge. And coming from South, and being in a prime ski location, believe me, Mammoth, yeah, I spent a lot of time in Mammoth in the 70s and the early 80s. And whole families went skiing. My mother didn't go, but my sister, my brother, myself, and my dad went. And schools even had ski trips. I remember when I was in that's such a memory that just, woo, talk about a memory berry. So I was in the 10th grade and I was in the upper, I guess, AP course, advanced placement courses. For some reason, they thought I was smart like my brother. So they immediately, Mr. McKenzie, our counselor, because we both were McWilliams, so we got Mr. McKenzie, and for whatever reason, and my brother went through that, so he put me through the same program. But they went on a ski trip, and I said I'm going to go too. And let's just be honest, I was the only person of color in that class, in that particular group at that time at Uni High. And they were all surprised that I was going to go. I said, "Yeah, I'm going to go." And they were all, "Oh, okay, yeah, this guy's going to go skiing." I got up on the slopes and I whipped their asses. And I remember this one girl, Tamara. This is where the memory comes in. This girl, I can't remember, Tamara, I want to say her name was, who I had kind of a thing for. She had kind of a thing for me after that. So it was pretty funny. I really, then I said, "Oh, where'd you ski at?" I've skied here before because we just went up to Mammoth. I mean, I've been skiing that place since before my teens. That's funny. Mike, did you ever take guitar lessons or are you self-taught? A very short version of that story because I've told it 1,000 times. I wanted to take up guitar. My father was kind of cheap. He'd buy me a pair of skis, but not a guitar. So he went to his good friend Jim Dorsey's house. Jim had a old acoustic guitar sitting in the window. That thing had been sitting there since the 60s. This was the 70s and late 70s. And he took that. My father knows nothing about musical instruments, knew nothing about strings or anything like that. So when he put me with that guitar in a class with a bunch of students and the teacher started tuning the guitar, of course, bang, bang, class is giggling. I'm sinking down in my chair, wishing that I wasn't there, and that put me off from guitar lessons. I then started self teaching myself until I got into college, and then I had a guy named William Red, interesting enough, um, Bill Red. Uh, well, actually, his last name was Fox. Bill. But everybody called him like you probably called him Red, Mr. Fox. And he was my guitar teacher, instructed me in jazz a little bit. And then in Japan, I had another guitar teacher, bluesman, very well known, High Tide Harris, who actually lived in my neighborhood, and he became my teacher. He's the one who kind of put me in another direction. But yeah, that's about it. Nothing really to speak of. Another deleted message. So fewer kids are now. And by the way, not just the ski trips, but ski shops were everywhere. I remember in LA, they had what was the name of that Alpine Village or something like that. They had ski shops. When you went to Fedco, they had a whole ski section for skis. At Big Five. Big Five was a big sports retailer in Southern California. You go to Big Five, a whole section for the skis. You know, over time things changed and fewer kids were being introduced to the sport. Now, I don't know why that is. You would think that there would be no limit to that, but one of the things is expensive. Lift tickets are expensive. Alex told me what he pays for his season pass. He paid, what it was. He has to work during the summer just to save up enough money to buy his season pass uh, for the lift. I mean, it is an outrageous amount. And of course, because of these things and a lot others, ski culture shrank. Guess I should have told you in time I'm a time traveler. That's why we're both so familiar with each other. Yeah, man. Um, Mr. Fox, Bill Red Fox. I guess that was his jazz name because you have to understand this was in LA up off Crenshaw. And in the 50s and 60s, my uncle Carlton will tell you that that was a big scene for black musicians. Um, watch the movie Devil in a Blue Dress. If you want to see what LA was like during that time period, right after the war, late 40s, early 50s, going into the 60s, and see what that was like, watch that movie. That is an accurate depiction. Those houses that they filmed in, those are real houses that do exist in the neighborhoods that I used to drive through, grew up in. And really, just an interesting, just an interesting thing. But anyway, I digress. Let me get back to the point. All those ski shops, I think even Big Five is gone. I haven't checked because I haven't been to LA in a minute. But in any case, that culture shrank. Some ski resorts that existed back then don't exist anymore. Um, ski shows used to be huge, and you could fill up a convention center with a ski show, and they would have like an artificial ski ramp, the whole nine. I'm not kidding. They used to be big, but they're a lot smaller. Sound familiar? Like maybe Nam? People show up and mostly just kind of look at each other now. Sound like Nam? And this shows that, and by the way, at these shows, it's always the same people, by the way, year after year after year, sitting around looking at each other. I told you when I go here to Venendal every once or twice a year, Um, I think that's coming up here in a minute. Um, it's the same people. It's the same people. Sound familiar? And if you look at the guitar world, the golden era of guitar culture was probably, what would you say, maybe 1965 to 1995. Let's be generous. So 30 years. That was the golden era. During that time, rock bands just dominated the charts, dominated the culture. And you saw guitars on TV, on MTV, or hell, even before that. you know, if you're watching Hee Haw, you saw guitars. And radio played guitar music, guitar oriented music all day long. And record stores were everywhere, like ski shops. They were everywhere. If you were a teenager, guitar was unavoidable. Magazines, ads, like, what was her name? Kelly LeBrock, that actress. Every picture I could see of her in a fashion shoot, she was like holding a guitar for some reason. I thought she was an actress, not a guitar player. But anyway, but that was a big thing in print ads. The Midnight Special. Thank you, BBT Legit. Very good point. You stayed up to watch a band on the Tonight Show or on the Midnight Special. That was part of it, and you saw it, you heard it, you wanted to try it. Hey, that looks pretty cool. Let me try that. This is probably the reason why I asked my father for a guitar. But that culture pipeline today looks completely different. Looks completely different. And it's different in almost every way. Scott says, is it that modern players get good at guitar before they're old enough to get hooked on bar bands so they don't see the value of being in a band? A legitimate question, sir. A paradox, so to speak. But let's not put the chicken before the egg too much, gentlemen. Yeah, the streaming algorithms, the short form videos, the social media clips, and a lot of the most popular music, let's just be honest, is really doesn't center around guitars. It's mostly centered around percussion, like hip hop and Afro beats and electronic music and pop production. just to name a few. Dance music, DMSR, dance music, sex, romance. Even in concerts, you sometimes see, I've been observing, people dancing on stage and tracks running, but there's nobody really playing any instruments or holding any instruments, or in most cases, any instruments really around. Now, that doesn't mean that the music is bad. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that with that kind of culture shift, it's very hard if you're young to focus on any one thing when there's no thing in particular to focus on. I guess maybe, you know, there were so few people when I was really, really in my stride in the 90s in LA that wanted to produce rap. That was for those guys. And everybody wanted to be in the R&B or the pop scene. That's where the money was flowing at that time. That flipped on a dime, where nobody wants to do R&B or pop. And everybody wants to do beats and Afro beats and this, that, or the other. But it does mean something important, that the visual symbol of what music is has changed. Knee music can't even be transposed to guitar easily. Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. Um, and then it would change it. You know, it just doesn't work. BBT legit says exactly. Most of these bands are using tracks now. Yeah, it's obvious. You can see it. If you've ever played live, you can hear it automatically. It stands out. But for decades, that symbol was the guitar, and now it's not. Interestingly, there is one place where guitars are alive still, and that's in country music. I saw a picture of, you know, I don't know why it is, but every time I see Taylor Swift holding a guitar, I just feel like she's going to tip forward. 'Cause, like she's like this, and the guitar is like this, and that's because she's so small. Somebody needs to introduce that woman to a Telecaster. I think that she likes to play other. She needs to play a Telecaster. I think that would be a more appropriate guitar, um, more comfortable guitar. But country music, jazz, BBT, legit. I have to tell you, I will say this, and as a guy who grew up, because his dad listened to KKGO in LA constantly, constantly. If my father wasn't listening to KKGO, he was listening to some opera channel. Like seriously. But jazz is now regulated to the same space as classical music. Jazz is played in orchestral halls and things of that nature, mostly, unless you're in New Orleans, and then you can still find the spirit, a pulse there of it. But the truth is that it is regulated to the dustbin of history in a lot of ways. I miss the imperfections in live music. Things have gotten far too sterile. Yeah, well, you know, you can blame satellite radio for that, where everything has to sound perfect. Um, you know, it's there's a lot of things that are lost. I told you some of those happy accidents that occur in a studio that they're so busy erasing those artifacts. Some of those actually can make up the song and fill in places that you didn't even think of, and that's the truth. Country music has kept the tradition, you know, going on. You see Telecasters, Strats, live bands, players on stage. Country music kept the instrument tradition alive more than most genres. And mainstream pop culture, the guitar is no longer center stage. I'm thankful for country music because I don't know if I want to hear country electronica. I'm thankful for that. But there, from my understanding of, like, for example, you know, the Nashville recording scene, there's like three guys who are playing all the guitar gigs, and you ain't one of them. But that's no different than LA. LA, there was basically three guys back in the day too, so that hasn't stopped. But outside of Nashville, the guitar is no longer center stage. Another huge difference are record stores. In the 70s and 80s, they were culture hubs. One of the terrible spin-offs from that 70s show was a show called That 80s Show. And it was trying to make that point that the center hub of culture was a record store. That was the primary location for everything, the hijinks that went on. But that show failed because it was weird in the way that they were presenting the 80s. They were presenting it like somebody had never been there and heard about it. One thing they did get right was the fact that the record store was a place you went to. I remember in Japan, I would go to Tower Records in Shibuya. That place is packed, and that was in the in the '90s, late '90s. You saw album covers with guitars. You talked to other musicians, also, even in record stores. There's a lot of musicians in there, and that environment pushed people, in my opinion, towards wanting to play instruments in the first place. Unfortunately, today, another cultural shift is that music discovery is actually private and digital. Private and digital. Headphones, iPhones, algorithms, right? You don't have that cultural hub that seeds of creativity used to spring out of. It really reflects a complete and total change in the cultural social ecosystem. BBT legit says that's why I like Bruno Mars. He uses real instruments in his music. He does. You can see videos of Bruno Mars sitting down to the drums. He'll sit down and he'll come up with a beat, which is what I used to do. I mean, it makes me smile. So I know that he came from somebody. Somebody taught him the same way that I was taught. Play the drums enough so you can keep in time, get a good solid beat, and then start, layering on top of that. And so I got a lot of respect for that. I've got nothing to say about him. Although, although his new look with the mustache and everything, it looks 70s pornish, porn actorish. I don't know if that's a stylistic choice that I think he should have made. However, that's just image. Now, why does this matter for the guitar market? Well, this connects directly back to our last live stream. If fewer younger people are entering into the guitar world and older players are starting to sell their gear, right, then the market starts to look a little different. Little different. Not dead, not dead per se. I'm not calling for the total, annihilation of the guitar market, but it looks different. It looks as much as different as the ski shops do or did. Well, they're not around anymore. Wow. But they're not totally gone. Footprint was whew, and then it became whew. This cycle. It grew at some point. At some point, the ski market grew and grew, 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 and grew, and then it shrank. Our market grew, 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 and grew, and then it shrank. It's a cycle. I have a lot of respect for the Beastie Boys back in the day because they sampled their own riffs and used actual. Yeah, they did everything. That was in the free. It was because of that was that ill. What's the name of that ill? You'll remind me, Scott. Ill, that album. Anyway, because of that album, that the whole sampling thing started, getting litigious as well. Ill communication. Thank you, Scott. Because of that album, which was a freaking fantastic album, but you could never make an album like that these days again. It was in that gray zone before people, and then when it blew up, of course, everybody wanted to get paid. Bruno Mars has access to the best songwriters and musicians money can buy, but the lad can sing great. Yeah, no, he's really seriously, legitimately a musician on his own. If you put Bruno Mars, and this is always my litmus test, you put Bruno Mars in a studio by himself, software of his choice, recording method of his choice, and food and and sleep provided if needed, he could come up with an album all by himself, playing the instruments himself and singing it. And so, you know, like I said, I respect that because that's what I do. I strove to do. Now, again, that's small. That's a cycle. A little bit more specialized, just like the ski industry. Still passionate people out there who love skiing. You know, skiing is still, in the Winter Olympics, so it hasn't died completely. But snowboarding has become more popular, hasn't it? Ski, events, but the snowboarding, let's watch that. It's still alive, like ski's still alive, like I said, and guitar is still alive, but no longer the massive cultural force that they used to be. BBT legit says, I agree with you. He can definitely make an album himself. Yep. Been listening to Daft Punk. Great. Ram. Goddamn, that's a great sounding album. Yeah, man, those guys knew how to put. But I think Nile Rodgers had a finger in the production of that record. Am I incorrect in that? Or at least a track or two in that. He certainly played, as I seem to recall. Great, great, great stuff by great players. Make great music, and that'll never change. However, the focal point on the guitar, specialized, still there, not dead, but a lot smaller, just like the ski industry. And that brings up an interesting question. Maybe the future of guitar isn't necessarily about huge numbers of players. Maybe it becomes something more akin to a craft, like photography or skiing. A passionate culture for it, taku culture, if you will allow me to use the Japanese word, but for a passionate collector or observer, but a smaller footprint. Smaller footprint. Now's on it and lost and lost or of live. Yeah, yeah, lots of live players. Yeah, yeah, good stuff. You're correct. Now Rogers did produce that album. Yeah, I thought so. I anything that he produces or works on, I sit down and listen to. So I listen to that album on YouTube. I like his work. I am an admirer and amazed at his age that he's still doing it. Lots of live players. I got you, man. That's a great album. It's just good work. Again, like I said, when you got a guy like that, I'd love to bring in John Paul Jones to produce my album, to be frank. But that's just me. It worked out for the girls. Why shouldn't it work out for me? The Wilson sisters. Any case, it's just shrinking. It's getting smaller. And I think that that's a legitimate thing. Um, but it's a reality. It happens. These cycles happen. I guess that's what I'm trying to say is that we are seeing, a cycle and we're on the back end of it. As I was saying before, there is a front end that will come down the line and will be sparked for some reason. But for right now, we're on the back end of this trend. Let me ask you guys something. I'd like to hear you down in the chat. How did Red asked me. Let me ask back the question to all of you. How did you first get into guitar? Was it a friend or a parent, a band you saw on TV, or something that you completely discovered on your own? I'd like to hear about that. I'd like to hear from you. Check out. Oh yeah, sorry, Red. I didn't see that. Got to scoot for a bit. How's Bridget Judy's? Gotcha. We'll come back if able. If not, cheers and prayers for our prayers to you too, Red. Thank you so much for showing up. God bless. Thank you. Mike, in your opinion, what pushes a band from being a solid band to a global success like Kiss and ACDC? Being agents of the man. I'm serious because there's a lot of solid. Man, I saw so many singers and so many bands in LA in the 90s when I was producing and working. Fantastic singers, fantastic people. Some of them actually, went on to do some things, but most of them did not. And the gatekeepers that existed at that time, uh, they were basing it upon the decisions that the man was making. We talked about Laurel Canyon, so we know that that exists. I think that's really what makes the difference. Whose side are you on, so to speak? Is it the music, or they got lucky, or pushed harder? Um, I would say that in that scenario that I just sketched out, some would call that lucky. Certainly got pushed harder because they were in, and sometimes pushed off the ledge. Now it's just played guitar on a few tracks. I'm gonna listen to that again. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna make a mental note, Maddie, to take a second to listen to that. It's been a minute. My parents were hippies. I was listening to 70s acoustic music in the room. Yeah, man, Joni Mitchell. I told you, my mother was a country girl, is a country girl. God bless her. And it was John Denver and Joni Mitchell and just and gosh, then Carol King and some serious hippie music too. Like my mother, you know, just loved it. She just absolutely adored it, and I grew up listening to it too. Get lucky. That was right. I got into guitar once I saw Prince. Really? That's interesting. I was into guitar before the first time I saw Prince, but not by too many years. First time I saw Prince was on one of those like night flicks or night videos or whatever shows that came on Channel 7 back in the late 70s, early 80s. And he was doing Dirty Mind. And so it freaked me out because he was wearing leopard skin underwear and a trench coat. That was the first time my brother and my sister and we saw that, and my brother did not approve at all. I myself, I was a little put put off, but once I heard the music, I was like, hey, that. So yeah, I had a, and then I took off from there with him. The whole album is worth listening back to. For yeah, when I listen to it, I'm gonna listen to the whole album. I ain't listen to singles. If I'm gonna listen to an album, I want to do it the way that I used to. I want to hear the whole thing back to front. You know, hell, I made my albums to be listened to from beginning to end. I saw the Beatles on that television at the age of 3 and was hooked for life. Even at that young age, I remember it was like yesterday. Big for a guitar and finally got one at 9. Wow. 3 years old and the Beatles. That is a story of so many people that they saw the Beatles. That was 64, as I seem to recall in my memory. I was still 3 years off. My brother was born that year, 64. So you just gave up your age there now, didn't you, Mr. Watson? um, and it influenced a lot of people. That story is and again that cultural shift where that one moment and the seeds of creativity that came out from it. It's amazing, and we just don't have that kind of culture anymore because we've moved from the public to the private. from the analog to the digital. I was walking down the street and Tower Records was blasting ACDC's Back in Black, and it made me stop in my tracks because I'd never heard anything like it before. Now everybody's wearing headphones. Hell, you can go to discos where they have a DJ. People are dancing, but it's a silent disco. You're wearing headphones. So there's that. Bay City Rollers, love the Bay City Rollers. My dad has an acoustic lying around, and I got a Floyd Rose Washburn for my 14th birthday. The rest is history. That and seeing Bon Jovi in '95. I won tickets by playing guitar on the radio. Yo, man, that's an awesome story, Maddie. That's that's a see. I'm glad I asked the question. Great stories like that come out. Yes, he was wild when he first came out. You do know he got booed opening up for the Rolling Stones, and they were throwing that man. They threw beer cans, they threw eggs, and the story that Andre Simone tells, or was it Dr. Fink? One of the two of them tells that in the middle of the set, he just went off. He said there was just a huge set of steps that led for the artists to go up to go out. And he said he just saw this little guy was with his guitar slung over his shoulder, just heading up the steps. He just bailed. Took Mick Jagger to call him on got on the plane that day, flew back to Minneapolis. Mick Jagger had to call him up personally and say, please come back. True story. In high school, we had a goofy fellow that always had pretty girls around him. Went to a school dance and he was a guitar player in the band. Mm-hmm. Now there's a hint and a half. Sold my first car and bought a guitar. That's a great story, Craig. Welcome to the chat. Yeah, that'll do it to you too. I have to admit, let's be honest. By the time I got to high school, um, I figured out pretty much I wasn't going to be one of the jocks like my brother was. And hell, he was on the tennis team. So just kidding, David. But anyway, I wasn't going to be in that group. So, but having that guitar, bring it to school, it changed people's perspective of you, especially with the girls, because suddenly you became you know, musician, and that used to carry some weight. These days I don't know. I did. It was also Buddy Holly and Motown on early car rides. Car rides, yeah. For me, I have to say, and I know you guys, are gonna go like, some of you are really gonna hate when I say this, but for the guitar, no, for the acoustic guitar and mandolin, it was John Denver. My mother playing John Denver's great. I know somebody just said that's worse than death on the chats a few days ago, and I understand. I understand. But when I heard the sound of the mandolin on any song, it was the most beautiful, sweetest, most glorious thing I ever heard. Now, when I started recording it and learning how to play it and record with it, I learned that there's a lot of studio tricks that you have to do, EQing to do to get the harshness out of it in order to get it sweet. But I was influenced by that. That would be my influence for the mandolin came from John Denver. I don't know who was the mandolin player on that album, but I can directly tie my mandolin playing back to that. You know, true story. Keep the Faith tour, that was huge. Yeah, yeah. Um, Bon Jovi was the band, and Bon Jovi was the man. And there's no, I always looked at Karl Marx as a budget John Bon Jovi back then, if that makes any sense to you, and Brian Adams as well, in kind of a strange way. Mellencamp, he was off on his own. He was something different. But yeah, John Bon Jovi was the man, and the music that they came out like "Living on a Prayer," that stuff was like, yeah, that was everywhere. That was everywhere. Sambora, his guitar playing on Dead or Alive. So his sorry guys, I have to pull the song out of my vault, dust it off, go kind of through the melody a little bit to get to the chorus. But Dead or Alive, the guitar playing on that was awesome. I play that. That's one of the few cover songs I actually learned how to play because I love that so much. I love that guitar playing. But all this stuff when we think about um, where we first identified with guitar or bass or mandolin, whatever, drums, it these stories will often include family, friends, radio, record stores, school bands, and and the top 40. All the things that introduce people to guitars in the past. And that culture shifted. Guitar culture used to spread person to person. Isn't that wonderful? Like the flu. And once you caught it, you didn't get rid of it. Well, some people. Well, one out of 10 didn't get healthy. 9 out of 10, according to the Fender stats, do eventually cure their guitar fever. But that 1 out of 10 becomes 100, becomes 1,000, becomes 100,000, becomes 1,000,000, and you get this culture growing and growing and growing. And then, of course, like I said, that million becomes 100,000, that 100,000 becomes 50,000, and it shrinks. So, who's introducing the next generation to guitar? That's why the guitar market has a demographic problem. You don't have that family to family or friend to friend kind of culture exchange going with the guitars anymore. And if they are talking about something, it's not guitar. They're talking about what DAW to record, Afrobeats on is best. And that's the truth. I'm not knocking that, slightly mocking it, but I'm not knocking it. I'm just pointing it out. Who's introducing the next generation to guitar and how? And how? If those previous mechanisms that we're using in order to learn skiing no longer exist and the ski market shrank, then you can see the parallel with the guitar market. If you were 15 years old today, let me ask that question. Do you think you would still pick up guitar or something else? Ask yourself that question. Ask yourself that question. These days, tour 1995 peak John Bon Jovi. Yeah, that's peak time. I know it. Believe me, I know it. Absolutely. Because I was touring in Japan still when they swung through. I didn't go to see them, but it was like John Bon Jovi song, Kyoa live desu de. It's like everybody's talking about it. So it's just, it was something. But again, person to person, friend to friend, shit, family to family in some cases. Mom wanted to go get some John Bon Jovi on and drug pops and the rest of the family with her. But again, that doesn't exist. So who's going to buy this? So you got a demographic problem there because young people, you can't convince me, not in this culture, not the way it's set up now, that if I was 15 years old, I would naturally gravitate towards guitar. I admire my nephew Alex the fact that he did. His dad had a little bit to do with that because his dad, had a guitar laying around, and it sparked his interest. And you know, it's it takes that. It takes that. It takes that kind of family to family. So think about that. If the car, if if this guitar culture is shrinking, then that means that it'll become just a niche eventually because it has a demographic problem. Because the cultural phenomenon that caused it to expand in the first place no longer exists. And if that cultural phenomenon no longer exists in order to make that 1 out of 10 become 100, become 1,000, become 100,000, a million, so forth, you need the things that I described tonight in order to spark that. You see that in the ski industry. If you were 15 years old living in LA now, would you necessarily be like me up on, the ski slopes every winter? Maybe not. Probably not. Maybe not. I don't know. See, there's other things. And if you did, would you be skiing? You'd probably be snowboarding. See, that's another thing too. You might be up there, but you're not skiing, you're snowboarding. So something to think about, guys. Something to ponder upon, something to consider, if you will. Um, yeah, dig that. It's wild. Um, that's it. That's all I have to say on that. You'd be doing street takeovers on a mini bike. Yeah, Scott, you got that right. I see that. I see that in LA a lot these days. It's insane. That place is definitely one for the books. So again, just something to think about, guys. I think that the guitar market has a demographic problem. I really do. I think that all signs point to that, all reasonable signs. So there's that. Thanks, guys. Thank you so much for this, for allowing me to sit here and pontificate my thoughts to you. As always, I appreciate you showing up in the chats and adding your thoughts and stimulating my thoughts. Again, some of the things that you guys say may be the next thing that I talk about. So please, all I ask is if you're watching this live or in the rerun, hit the like button. That always helps. And please, please make a comment down in the comment section. I guarantee you I will reply to it. I won't use AI either to use the reply. You can make replies now on YouTube using AI. How lazy is that? Like, that's awesome. You can like click that and post. I mean, how lazy do you have to be to not spend 3 seconds to read somebody's reply and then just type a reply? They're really, that's one of the most insidious things about smartphones is that actually, like No Child Left Behind, where a lot of children got left behind, the smartphone is dumbing people down. It's making them damn well lazy. AI. Did you hear about the professor who got fired? No, I'm sorry. The reporter who got fired because he was using AI to write his articles, his editorials, and he wasn't checking the quotes. The AI was making up quotes. How lazy do you? Okay, so you have the AI do the framework. Then when you read through it and then make adjustments, I don't get this. That is incredibly. And he got fired as a result because they caught him. Oh, that's the thing I wanted to say before I go. I actually, believe it or not, guys, for those of you who are still sticking around, I auditioned yesterday. I had to do some recording yesterday. I was asked to send in a demo for a voiceover job. They sent me the script. Actually gave me a selection of scripts to choose from, and I had to do a voiceover um, for. Let me see. I don't know if I can play it loud enough where you guys can hear it, but I had to do a voiceover for a company, and I had to do the recording. Um, it was voice acting, so I had to change my voices depending upon how the script went, and record that and send that off. And that was pretty awesome, to be honest with you. I was very happy to be able to do that. We'll see if I get it. Can you hear this? Was dark, except for Arya's interface. Webb stood at the viewport, staring into the black. I don't know if you guys can hear that. You haven't slept in 42 hours, Captain. Neither have you. No one requires sleep, she said. I don't know. That's too low, guys. I can't. But it's it's pretty interesting to be able to sit there and record yourself doing different voices and reading from the script. I had a lot of fun. I like doing voices. Actually, I do. Uh, so I turned that in. Let's see if that comes through. That would be interesting. I don't get to do much voiceover. I did a lot of it in Japan, but this one would actually be voice acting. So anyway, that was fun. I actually said that once I think I'm done, they pull me back in again. But it was pretty cool recording that demo, and let's see if something comes from that. I certainly do hope so. I would enjoy doing that job. That would be a great job. In any case, I will see you guys for Sunday at Mike's. Yeah. Oh, I heard from Fern one last thing too. Fern said my guitar is ready, so I might film myself going down going down to Fern and picking up that guitar. So maybe I'll do that. I still have one in the pocket that I need to release, but the more and more I look at that one, I'd like to try something else. But anyway, something else will be coming out with my regular content as well soon enough. Keep your eyes open for that. Check out my website over at bandcamp.com, Asanoki at bandcamp.com. Take a look at the stuff over there if you're interested in my music. Take a listen, it's free. If you like it, buy a copy. I have CDs available as well. I can send it off to you. They get there eventually. In this world, in this mail system, they do get there. But thanks, guys, so much for having the time to listen to me tonight. I appreciate your time so much. Until the next one, you guys take care. Bye bye.